Okay, so today we're going to be doing section 10.2, which talks about surface area. So surface area is basically the area of all the faces of a three-dimensional figure. So we'll start with the surface area of a cube. A cube has edges of equal length. It has 6 faces, so we can calculate its surface area by adding the sum of the areas of its faces, okay? The length of a side is S, which we have labeled here. So a cube has 6 square faces. And the area of a square, we all know this, is side squared, right? And if you've got those 6, remember on a piece of die or dice, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So the surface area of a cube can be found by multiplying the area of one face of the cube or one square by 6, right? Because area of each side times 6 sides. So the formula is S equals 6S squared. And this S stands for surface area, and this S stands for side. So this is a little s, okay? Just so you're aware of that. And that's it for a cube. Moving on, we have a prism. So a prism is a solid with 2 identical faces called bases, which are in parallel planes. So see how this has a square base and this has a square base? This has a triangular base and this has a triangular base. That's what it means. 2 opposite sides are identical. So parallel planes are planes that never intersect. We know that. And a prism's other faces are called lateral faces or simply just faces. Okay, so this is sort of like the rectangular version of a cube, this one here, and this is a triangular version, okay? So this is what we call a prism. Okay, let's look at an example. Okay, so moving on, the surface area of a prism can be found by unfolding the prism and finding the sum of each face, of the areas of each face, using this formula. So let's break down what this formula means. Basically, you're going to be finding this is our constant way of finding areas of these shapes is an area of each face, okay, for the surface area. Okay, so let's break this down. S obviously is surface area. The B stands for base area. The P is perimeter of the base. And the H is the height. Okay? And if you're confused on which side is the base, you can see that these are all 10, all 4 of these sides that we call the lateral faces, right? So the other sides, the 2 that are the same, those are the bases here. Okay? Okay, moving on. Let's solve this here. First of all, base area. 4 times 3, right? Base equals length times width equals 4 times 3, which is 12. Okay, now the perimeter. Right, 3, and we have 3 here and 4 here also, so 3 plus 3 plus 4 plus 4, so the perimeter is 14, and the height is 10. That value we haven't used yet, that would be the height, which is 10 here. So then we just plug it into the formula. Side equals 2 times 12, surface area equals 2 times 12, plus 14 times 10. And our surface area will come out to be 164 feet squared. Okay, and that's it. Moving on, let's look at this triangular one. Okay, so let's start with base. Base equals, and remember, it's base area, so here it's going to be base times height divided by 2. So it'll be 3 times 4 divided by 2, which is 6. And then our height is 7. Our perimeter is the sum of all of these sides, so 5 plus 3 plus 4, and we get 12. We plug it into the formula, we get surface area equals 2 times 6 plus 12 times 7, and we get 96 millimeters squared. All right, that's it for prisms. Okay, moving on. Cylinders. So cylinder is a solid with two congruent circular bases in parallel planes connected by a curved surface, similar to a soup can. The surface area of a cylinder is the sum of the areas of its bases and the area of its curved surface. So imagine sort of, if I were to break this down, we'd have two circles, right? And then a rectangle that wrapped around the squares. So that's the shape that we're working with as three separate shapes to find the area. Now let's look at the formula for this. So the surface area of a cylinder is derived from the prism formula, which is surface area equals 2 times base area plus the perimeter of the base times the height. So the base area of a circle, what's the area of the circle? Pi r squared. Something we already know, right? The perimeter is the circumference of the circle, right? The perimeter of the base, which we know is pi d. So automatically that means the surface area is equal to 2 pi r squared plus pi d times the height. Or if you just want to be working with the radius, it would be 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r times the height. Okay? So let's look at this formula here. This cylinder. So 2 pi times the radius, 4 squared, plus pi times 2 times the radius again, 4 times the height, which is 6. That's it. You can just plug all of that into your calculator, right, as is, and we get 251.3 inches squared. And that's how you'll find the surface area of a cylinder. Moving on, pyramids. Okay. The pyramids we discuss in this chapter are regular pyramids. The bases are regular polygons, which sides are the same lengths. Pyramids with square and equilateral triangle bases are the only two examples of regular pyramids we'll be looking at. Okay, so this is a perfect square here as a base, or it could be an equilateral triangle, but it will be constant, okay? So both regular pyramids and cones have a slant height, sort of like walking up the base to the peak, that slant, that leaning height, that's what we use as our height in these examples. Okay, so see where we have L labeled here? It's not the value, it's the height of the side of the face, okay? Because if it was just the height of the whole pyramid, it would come down to the center like this. And that's not what we want. So just be aware, when we talk about length and height, it's this L. It's the height of the face. Okay, let's look at an example. Okay, so the formula we're using here is going to be surface area equals the base area plus 1/2 times the perimeter times the length, or the slant height. The reason we have a half here is because our side faces are all triangles and not rectangles, which is the main difference between this and a prism. All right, so let's just plug it in. Remember, L is the slant height. So let's start with our base area. Our base is 8 by 8, so b equals 8 times 8, which is 64. And then our perimeter equals 8 times 4, because there's 4 sides, which gives us 32. We plug that all in, and our slant height here we have is 14. Plug that all in, surface area equals 64, 64 plus 1/2 times 32 times 14. And this gives us 288 meters squared. Remember, all of our units here will be squared because we are talking about area, right? Okay, so moving on, let's look at this shape here. This is, again, a pyramid, but this time the base is an equilateral triangle. So we know that if this is 6 on the base, this is a 6 base length, and this is also a 6 base length. Right, and it's equilateral. So let's start with the perimeter. Perimeter equals 6 times 3. So we're just adding all those together, right? So the perimeter is 18. Next, we are looking at the area of the base. Base equals base times height divided by 2 of that shape. The only thing is we don't know the height of this triangle, so we have to figure that out. So to do that, we just do height equals a squared plus b squared equals c squared equals a squared plus 3 squared equals 6 squared. So the square root of a squared, square root of 27, and a equals 5.2. Alright, so now we can use that to find the base area. The base area is base times height divided by 2, which is 5.2 times 3 divided by 2, which is 7.8. After all that, we are going to multiply by 2, however, because we're breaking that down into 2 triangles, the base. Okay? So, just that's how we're going to find the area of the base of a triangle. So it's a little extra work there, just be aware. Alright, and the last thing we need is the lateral height, and that's 8. Okay, so that's supposed to be labeled there. So put it all together. If surface area equals 15.6 plus 1/2 times 18 times 8. And we get 87.6 centimeters squared. Alright, that's it for that. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at a cone. So a cone is a little bit different because below we have the formula for the surface area of a cone, and like other formulas, it is the sum of the area of the base and the lateral cone. The top of the cone is what we call a vertex. The slant height equals the distance to any point on the edge of the base. So we know that the base is a circle, and when we sort of unwind the cone part of the shape, it looks a little imperfect, which is why we have all these pies, because we're dealing with round edges. Alright, so L is our slant length, again, our slant height, R is radius, and B is base area. And then this is our formula here. Alright, so let's do this example. Surface area equals pi times the radius squared, so 4 squared, plus pi times the radius, so 4, times the slant height, which is 7, which is easy. Okay, as long as you know these formulas, these ones are good because you have to plug it in. You don't really have to solve for anything in the process. Okay, so put that on our calculator again, 138.2 feet squared. And that's it for a cone, straightforward. Okay, so now we're gonna look at a sphere. So a sphere is a ball, pretty much. A solid ball with all its points on the surface the same distance from the centers. the 3D version of a circle. So R goes from any point on that circle, on that ball at all, will have the same radius, which is 3 in this case. So this is our formula for sphere, surface area of a sphere. Okay, surface area equals 4 times pi r squared. Every time that's it, that's all you have to know. Okay, so let's look at this example. We have a radius of 3. So all we have to do is 4 pi times 3 squared, put it all in the calculator, and we get 113.1 inches squared. That's it. That's all you have to know for a sphere. Okay, so what is the surface area of a silo to the nearest square foot? The upper part is a half of a sphere. The hemisphere has a radius of 8, and ignore the silo surface on the ground. Okay, so all we have to know is the cylinder part and the hemisphere part. Okay, so let's start. Why don't I start with the cylinder? Okay, so our formula for the surface area of a cylinder is going to be 2 pi RH, which is 2 pi times the radius, which is 8, times our height, which is 40. And that gives us 2010.6. Okay, so remember we didn't have to add the 2 base surface areas that are usually here, like this, that make the top and bottom of a cylinder. We only had to find the part that wraps around here. Okay, so that's why we didn't use this whole formula, because there is no top. The top is a hemisphere, and the bottom we were told to ignore, right? So that's it. That's all we have to do. Now for the hemisphere, let's do that. Hemisphere. Okay, so we know that for a sphere the formula is 4 pi r squared, but it's only half of a hemisphere we have, so we have to divide that by 2. So when we plug it all in, we get 4 pi times 8 squared divided by 2, and we'll get 402.1. Okay, so now we found the surface area of this entire section of the cylinder, and we found the surface area of this top part of the silo here, the top hemisphere. So we just have to add them together. So 2010.6 plus 402.1 gives us 2,412.7 feet squared. And that's it. So when you're looking at these complex areas like this, you have to be careful and think sort of, what values do I need to have? What values aren't actually a part of this anymore? For example, that you're only doing half of a sphere, and that you're not including the base faces of the cylinder. Those are things that are important to this, so just read the directions carefully, and that's it. Okay, that's all the shapes we're looking at today, too. That was a lot, so be careful, have your formulas ready, and you'll be fine.